Hi, it's Jamie, Progressive's #1, #2 employee. Leave a message at the... Hey, Jamie, it's me, Jamie. This is your daily pep talk. I know it's been rough going ever since people found out about your a cappella group, Mad Harmony, but you will bounce back. I mean, you're the guy always helping people find coverage options with the Name Your Price tool. It should be you giving me the pep talk. Now get out there, hit that high note, and take Mad Harmony all the way to nationals this year! Sorry, it's pitchy.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guests and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of S4, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast or reproduction of this broadcast or podcast without express written consent of S4 is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to S4 Radio. Coming to you live from the dark side of midnight. Climb aboard as we explore all aspects of the paranormal, from UFOs and Bigfoot to ghosts and astral travel, and all the fringe subjects in between. You have found the cutting edge of paranormal talk radio with your host, Eric Cooper, and our S4 panel of specialists. Prepare to go to the edge. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to S4 with Eric Cooper, broadcasting live from the beautiful mountains of Concrete, Washington. Tonight, we are doing a special two-part show. On our first hour, we're going to be talking with Michael Hall about UFO I-Team's experience at Mount Adams and the eceti Ranch. And on the second hour, we're going to discuss chemtrails. Tonight on our panel, we have our Keith Andrews, astrologer and alien specialist, Michael Hall, the paranormal lawyer and head of UFO I-Team, myself, Corey Reese, and your host, Forest Moon Paranormal Zone, Mr. Eric Cooper.
Hey, good evening, everyone. And yeah, it's still kind of a summery night. The stars are looking great out here in Concrete. And yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing tonight's show because, you know, I've never personally been to eceti Ranch. Heard all about it. I mean, you hear all about the feline race that's seen out there and you know, Bigfoot. And it's just a phenomenal place. And looking forward to hearing about it. Now, for those of you that are local, we do have a pagan meetup again on the 16th, and the moment everybody's been waiting for, exactly 20 days till Paracon. We've been waiting for a year for this day to come up, and we've got Paracon coming up this month in 20 days. And actually, I got to give a shout out because, you know, I miss Trippin', and Trippin's in the chat room. And I haven't seen Trippin' in, oh God, 2 or 3 weeks now. I guess. I don't think. And yeah, you know, we have our regulars. I miss everybody when they don't show up in the chat room, but Trippin', yeah, we all miss Trippin'. Anyway, how's everyone doing tonight?
Just great, thanks. How's
wonderful. Yeah.
Fantastic evening.
Are we giving away free coffee mugs here? I don't know. Have you guys heard anything about, because Kevin's in the chat room asking if we're giving away free coffee mugs. Yeah, I haven't heard about that one yet.
I wish, because I can always use a coffee mug.
Oh, wow. So, yeah, and just for an update, yeah, we've been working hard on the same case for the last, oh, God, since the 4th of August, the missing person case, and just, wow, it's a rough one. I'm going to leave it at that. So if I sound tired, I am, because anytime you're dealing with a missing person case, you're very emotionally drained. Your energy is gone, and interesting things have been happening. But without further ado, you know what, Michael?
Yes.
Let's hear about eceti Ranch.
All right. Well, thanks for this time on S4, because this will be the first time actually that I've been able to kind of relate to the listening public what the heck was going on at the eceti Ranch at Mount Adams and Takalak Lake this last 4 days that the UFO team made a investigation safari up to that area. The idea being is that we wanted to be a part of a documentary film being made by the Wade brothers. That's W-A-D-E. Philip and Timothy Wade are the directors, producers of Ambition Pictures, and they're doing an actual documentary of UFO sightings, Bigfoot activity, orbs, and all sorts of paranormal activity around Mount Adams. They're talking north side of Mount Adams, south side where eceti Ranch is, the Takalak Lake area as well, which is very close to the mountain. And so what we did with the UFO team, we split up into 3 different groups. One group started out at, we all kind of met at eceti Ranch near Trout Lake, Washington, where James Gilliland runs for the last 32 years, the eceti Ranch, where he actually invites the public to come out and skywatch and camp and experience the myriad of UFOs that seem to fly up and around Mount Adams from that view, and across the skywatch field that they've got out there at the ranch, so you can see a beautiful view of Mount Adams from the south. Actually, you're looking north when you see Mount Adams from eceti Ranch. So we're all meeting there initially, setting up our Skywatch cameras. Lee Strauss on our team is our technical camera guy, one of them anyway. And he sets up the stop-action photography camera, which will record whatever is happening in the night sky on a 20-second aperture opening and then a 5-second closing of the aperture on the camera. 20 seconds on, 5 seconds off, all night long. For 2 hours or more, he will do the stop-action photography, which what it does is it condenses the actual skywatch time down a little bit so you can actually review these parts of the videos and catch the anomalies that pop out. Then we've got the night vision camera, which is a video night vision, where you can set it up, and when you take a look at the panorama of Mount Adams and the total black sky above it, on the monitor of the tripod that is hooked up to the camera so that you can see exactly what the field of view of the camera is seeing, the scenery is just lit up like daylight. Literally, you can see every aspect of the mountain. You can see where the snow line is, the tree lines. You can see actually the path that people will take to climb the mountain. And, of course, even the top of the mountain that's covered with snow reflects light so greatly in a night vision camera that it's just like daylight. And the night stars are just poking out big time. It's just like watching the band of the Milky Way just slide across the night sky in front of the camera while you're watching the monitor on the tripod there. Then we have another camera that's just basically a video camera and records generally what's going on in the sky in a peripheral manner as well. So just to cut to the chase on the first night and tell you what we experienced, it was very awesome. The highlight of the night was all of a sudden off to the left horizon, we see this very, very bright light. Now, this is a light that would not be mistaken for a satellite, for instance. You can see satellites all night long because of the no light pollution out there. And you can track them with your binoculars, and they'll go in a straight line, of course, be the same brilliance all the way across, which is not very brilliant. Most of them are so high up, they just look like moving stars, actually. So this object that was coming off from the left horizon was much, much bigger. I would say 20 times bigger than any satellite you have ever seen, and much more brighter than that as well. And it starts coming along and it catches everyone's attention. By the way, there was probably 75 people at eceti Ranch that weekend. This actually was the last weekend that we were there. And lots of people out with their gravity chairs, their lawn chairs. They're all just sitting there, waiting with their binoculars and all that stuff. So everyone noticed that this massive light was coming across from the left horizon. When it got closer and closer to our viewing point, all of a sudden this thing just flared up like you wouldn't believe. It was a round, very bright, diffused white light. And as we're looking at it, the thing fires up and probably goes maybe 10 times bigger in a flare-up than the original light that it portrays as it goes from left to right. It did that approximately 3 different times, and it was quite impressive at the time. And during that period of time, there was a person with a really good green laser pointer, pretty much industrial strength, to be able to get up there and be seen on camera. By the way, we're catching all of this on videotape, so they will be available, on this documentary that we're a part of with the Wade brothers and Ambition Pictures. But this thing flared up at least 3 separate times, very impressively. And on a third time, all of a sudden, it was if you were looking at a very bright light that turned into a flash bulb, and it just flashed in our direction, at least the direction we're viewing it from. And just so brilliantly, it just startled everyone. They just, a huge reaction went up from the crowd, and everyone couldn't believe how bright this flash was, literally in our direction. And of course, then at that point, the lasers, or the guy with the laser, was pointing it around, making a circle around the light as it's going from left to right in front of us at that point. And 3 separate times, three more times, this object just flashed like a light bulb right at us. As a matter of fact, on the camera, since we had a chance to review it that night and see how it came across on the video, it looked as if there was an actual burst of light in some kind of a laser form that came right at the camera. And it looked that way as well, even by your naked eye. But some folks were actually at the other end of the viewing area, which is probably 10 acres. It's just a very vast field that everyone can sit in. And the people at the far end of the viewing area swear that they saw an actual very light but vivid blue laser coming out of the object, because they were looking diagonally at it instead of straight on. The people that were in front of the cameras and the main viewing area, we didn't see any actual laser come out, but we saw this brilliant flash hit everyone in the face, the eyes, and you could just tell that it was like a light bulb went off. And for just a split second, it's hard to see, obviously. So that was the first night. Unidentified aerial phenomena that literally was what they call a CE5 event. Close encounters of the fifth kind, as defined by Dr. Richard Haynes, who is the ex-NASA retired human factors department head, is basically human-initiated contact with craft or alien entities. And if you review the video that we got of that craft going by, it's unmistakable that as soon as that laser circled the actual object itself, they tried not to, by the way, fire it directly at this object, not wanting to disable it or do anything that would harm it. But as soon as it circled the object with the laser, that's when these flashes happened. So it's almost as if that's perfect proof of human-initiated contact with this unidentified aerial craft. It kept going out of sight, and finally it just faded away. It didn't disappear like quickly, and it didn't flare up again. It just on the right horizon, the right-hand side of the woods there, it just disappeared over the trees and faded off very quickly. Now
okay, Michael?
That was the first thing that happened.
So Joe's got a question for you. So could the flash be an attempt to mess up your recording devices?
Oh man, Joe is very perceptive here, and I'll tell you why. We literally had our video cameras immediately drained of their battery power more than one time. And fortunately, we had at least one camera rolling when this object went by and flashed the light at us. Because one camera, the one camera that worked really well in the night vision, caught this craft and did not lose its battery power. But it was just typical. We'd be sitting there and all three cameras going at the same time. All batteries are charged up 100%, and literally within a minute, they all just die. The batteries go to zero. Now, here's the strange thing that Joe would like to hear about this. When the cameras shut off because the batteries just die, we go over to the cameras and try to figure out if what we need to do to change the batteries to get these things up and running. And after they've been off for about 30 seconds or a minute, all of a sudden the batteries pop right up to full power immediately, all by themselves. So
that makes sense.
I don't know what it is, but our Keith could probably tell us.
Well, what you're dealing with, it's sort of a combination of both the attempt to mess up the recording, but more importantly, communication. Because of the oscillation rate of their, if you will, photography work, it causes a dampening field on the batteries. The second that dampening field collapses, the batteries, they aren't actually drained, they're blocked.
Now that would make sense.
Well, Joe also goes on to say he only asks because he had one float over his place, the closest thing he's ever seen, and his camera wouldn't work until it was out of sight, and then it worked just fine.
It's so doggone frustrating, right? Exactly when you want your camera to work to record these, aerial phenomena, and you just can't get it going. And matter of fact, as we relate the story further, we'll find some other amazing electromagnetic effects that we are able to see as well.
And what's interesting is, that's the same concept with Bigfoot. You won't find Bigfoot pictures either for the same reason.
Yeah.
Going by the myriad of game cams that we've had people, set up, and they'll have the deer and the coyote go in front of the camera, and all of a sudden the camera goes white, and they'll hear, primate sounds and grunts and whatnot, and then the camera goes back to normal. And I mean, it doesn't turn the camera off per se, but you have a white field. So it makes you think maybe they're the same energy, not necessarily Bigfoot and UFOs are you have that argument of, well, Bigfoot's extraterrestrial. No, I don't think so. I think they're different. But supernatural fields are supernatural fields.
Not exactly. Well, as long as we accommodate or clarify the supernatural beyond what we understand, because it's a natural biomagnetic field. They just happen to know how to tap into the natural net in the forest and shut everything down. Not to mention modify the wavelength so you can't see them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's
that
the weakness of electronics.
No. Bio, meaning self-control by their own thought process.
Okay.
You can change the biomagnetic wavelength or field around you by concentration.
Now, Michael?
Yes.
What do you think is the draw? Now, and I'm going to pull back a little bit. What's the draw of some of these locations? You've got Skinwalker Ranch, which has very similar activity. You have, eceti Ranch. What do you think is the draw with these particular spots?
There seems to be some kind of, as R. Keith puts it, some kind of energy, either it's natural or it's some kind of a force there that is not understood by many of the scientists even to this day. Because one of the things that happens when you go to eceti Ranch, they have a parking lot area where you're supposed to park your cars, kind of like going to the old state fair and, you park out into the field, area. And they said, don't park on this side of the field. Just keep your car on this side of the field. And everyone did ask, well, why? And they say, well, if you park over there, your vehicle's battery will die. So that's just a vortex of some kind.
Corey, we might actually make this a 2-hour show. I want to bring Markham on this topic as well with the scientific side of it. Could ley lines have something to do with this?
I'm not an expert in that, so I don't know. But there is definitely something that seems to either be connected to the land, or James Gilliland believes and had some proof to show us of Bigfoot activity right there at the ranch. Matter of fact, the week before everyone showed up from the UFO I-team to the Skywatch there, he said that out in the field, right in front of where we were sitting for the Skywatch, he casted 2 or 3 Bigfoot footprints. And when he showed me one of them, I actually interviewed him and got him on tape showing us this. It looks just like the classic Bigfoot casting that you've all seen. This one, he says, was a juvenile Sasquatch because the footprint was about 16 inches long, but it was just super wide, wider than any basketball player you would ever see. And it was a impression of toes, very defined. The mid tarsal break and the whole thing very deep heel print as well. So I'm wondering whether, and I'll tell you why I think this as well later on, is that I'm wondering whether the Bigfoot presence also has a strange electromagnetic effect as well.
It does. And the more of them you have around, the more Bigfoot are around, the higher or the more intense the amplification field is. And the other aspect of that is, yes, your ley lines do have an amplification effect on the whole 9 yards.
Right. Now, my other, and again, I want Mark to come in on this when he gets on in the second hour, but my question would be too is where ley lines cross. We found in FMP that tends to create portals. And it makes me wonder if these specific, locations are at cross ley lines.
Well, that would make sense in my eyes.
Yeah.
I don't, in all fairness, I don't know the mapping of the ley lines. I just know the effects.
Right. And it makes total sense if that is a cross ley line point. Just like, Skinwalker Ranch, eceti Ranch, all these hot spots where you have the most UFO activity, the most Bigfoot activity, which, there's connections there. And it makes total sense that, the more families of Bigfoot in an area, that you would have a higher intensity of EMF readings.
Yes, and James Gilliland does say that he believes there is a local family of Bigfoot in that area. He thinks that the juveniles are there and the older, parents are around that area too. They traditionally lay out gifts of fruit and special foods for the Bigfoot, and they're just routinely disappearing, overnight when they lay them out there. And of course, with the footprints and supposedly the sightings of these Bigfoot in that area as well. And then, of course, on the other side of the mountain, the other group of us split up at that point and went to half of us went to Takalaka Lake. Some of the group, led by Lee Strauss, our cameraman, went to the top of Mount Adams, while the third group in our UFO I-team was out actually squatching to the northwest of the mountain. And they actually were in contact with each other through lasers and walkie-talkies throughout the whole time. And the synchronicities that happened on those three different investigations at the same time later on that week are phenomenal. So I'll wait and see if we have enough time to go there. But we're talking more up-close UFO sightings on tape, by the way. We've got some video of all of them, as well as further electromagnetic effects. And believe it or not, Bigfoot activity near the lake as well on the other side, along with the most puzzling aspect of all, two of our members have experienced missing time during that entire process, and I'm one of them. I can tell you a bone-chilling story that happened to me where I lost some time as well during that weekend.
Sounds excellent.
Considering the Sasquatch don't kidnap people, we'd have to say you've got an extra problem.
Yeah, and that's exactly right, Arkeith. That's what we kind of are putting together, and I'll tell you why in just a moment if we want to get there. I'll, of course, take a breath here and let you guys comment if you want, but I think you're right. I think we had UFO activity and possible short-term abduction during this period of time.
So, did you guys, by chance, have any entity sightings?
Yeah. Here's what happened at the Takalak Lake campsite. First of all, This is actually a federal national forest, and there is a campground there right next to this beautiful, serene, and actually small lake. You can see the opposite side of the lake all the way around. Covered with pine trees, beautiful foothills before Mount Adams. And then Mount Adams, the peak itself, is about 7 miles away from the campgrounds that we're at. But there is a live-in camp host who takes care of the campgrounds during the summer. And we met this woman. Her name was Jasmine. And she's very outdoorsy woman, very savvy to the wilderness. And she told us on tape, because we try to get all of this down and documented, she says the Bigfoot activity around this campsite next to Takalaka Lake is legendary. She says she has people who come and go, of course, during the camping season all summer long, constantly coming by her trailer where she is the hostess and concerned that they are seeing these large bipedal creatures, in the full moonlight, walking between the trees in the forest. And she says it's getting to be an old story to her because she's seeing these things. And she also mentions that she sees glimpses of them herself. Two members of the UFOI team were, this would have been late Monday night. We went to the Takalaka Lake on Sunday evening after we were at eceti for the weekend. So Sunday we're moving all of the team and the gear over to there would be the north side of the mountain, looking south now, because that's what the lake does. It looks south towards the peak of the mountain. And two members of the I-team were sitting up late at night around the campfire. We were all debriefing, of course, from the day before and another sky watch that we had that evening, which was fascinating. I can tell you about that as well. But while we were, this was probably about 1 a.m, and people are just about ready to break up and head to bed, go to their tents or trailers, whatever they have. And one of our members named Troy is a young, recent college graduate, and the other by the name of Sam, a woman who is very intuitive. Both claim that they saw through the moonlight. There was a full moon, by the way, that weekend. It was just gorgeous. And indeed, you didn't even need a flashlight to walk around the campsite at night because of the full moon shining through the trees and all around the area. And they both swear that they saw a large shadowy figure of a bipedal, some kind of a creature, walking between the trees and casting shadows from the moonlight. So that is the only but a very significant sighting of entities, I believe.
And I'm assuming you got to talk to James Gilliland while you were there?
I did. I actually got to interview James on film when he was telling us about the history of the eceti Ranch. He explained and displayed the casting of the Bigfoot footprint that he had just done the week before. And the very personable guy. The one thing I can say about James Gilliland is he's totally involved in this whole process. After even 32 years of running this ranch, he is out there every night talking to people, answering questions, and just kind of becoming the ultimate paranormal host, I would say. Quite a personable guy.
So, did you get a chance? Because I've heard the stories that come out of eceti. And did you ever hear about the feline race that people have described seeing?
When I was there this last weekend, I did not hear about that story. It's very possible that because we were so present, with our group, we had probably about 10 of us there, and so into the UFO Bigfoot thing that no one related to us that story. But that would be fascinating to check out as well. If we would have known about it, we would have.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the stories I do remember hearing coming out of there. Do you remember seeing the video about the door that was opening on Mount Adams?
Oh, of course. I do remember that. I remember Jimmy Church being there and recording it on video, the entire thing. Yeah, if you have a question about that, I can maybe delve into it deeper.
Yeah, go ahead. Did you get a chance to look at that area when you were there?
Well, we did. It is kind of interesting from our position at eceti Ranch. That is supposedly the perfect spot to be able to, look in, zoom in to find this. From what I remembered when I saw the Jimmy Church video of this thing on the side of the mountain, it almost looks like it's a square roll up kind of door, that would allow almost like a hangar door instead of sliding sideways. It looks as if it could have slid upwards or downwards, I suppose. So when I was there last weekend, I noted that portion of the mountain where the door is supposed to be is totally clear of snow. There is snow all up and down the mountain, of course, even this time of year in the summer. But that part of the mountain is kind of recessed, and it's darker than the rest of the mountain, and there's no snow on it. So even with binoculars, I could not tell if there was an actual door there myself. But here's the interesting thing, is that we actually sent up a team led by Lee Strauss to the top of the mountain. And on the team was Philip Wade, who is the head producer of Ambition Pictures. And his cameraman, Daniel, went along up the mountain. And all three of them were completely prepared to go up the mountain with crampons and ice axes and sub-zero camping equipment, sleeping bags, so they could spend the night. They spent 2 nights on the mountain. One of the nights, the walking route to get up to what they call lunch counter, where you gather your resources to make the assault on the top of the mountain, goes right by that blank spot where this door is supposed to be. Now, I'm not saying right under this spot, but I'm saying probably within a good viewing distance of where this door would be. And I know that Lee Strauss, our cameraman, is totally into that idea of this door being there. He didn't mention that he saw anything on the way up or down that would tip off to him that he definitely could film whatever this door would be. I think at one point he wants to make a specific safari climb right up to that area. It's a specific area you have to make a concerted effort to get to, rather than to normally take the normal trail up to the right-hand side of the mountain, looking from the south, and then going up to the right-hand side of the mountain to the summit.
So do you think, again, in your opinion, could it be a government door, or would it be an off-world door?
The videotape that I saw with Jimmy Church actually was able to isolate about 3 or 4 still frames out of the video. And what I saw was an actual aerial craft that did not look anything like a military craft, looked just like some kind of a saucer shape, dark object that was flying in stop action, since you had 3 different frames from this video, right towards the mountain. And it could be very easily discerned that this thing was heading towards that area where this door has supposedly been seen. So I'm thinking that if the military is making a door into a mountain, they're probably going to cloak it a lot better than that, and not have it so apparently visible that anybody could watch that door open, because it's so large in reality that you would think that the military would put something on a different side of the mountain, or I've even heard of mountain doors that can open and close almost as if they're being cloaked. They just go right inside, and you think it's like the mountain side, but it's really an open door as well. So I don't know that it's military.
And what's interesting is, you got Mount Adams, you got Mount Shasta, which has a whole lot of stories about the Pleiadians and it being in a whole other world inside. And, people go up there and want to go inside all the time. And you got Mount Baker right here in concrete, above concrete, that is said to have a mothership that's always around it. You've got Mount Rainier with a whole lot of story. I mean, you're in every one of these. Is not Mount Adams is also a dormant volcano, is it not?
Oh yes, and you can tell exactly where it had erupted in the past. There is a slide in a cave in at the top of the mountain. It comes down to the south side of the mountain as well. Very apparent.
Right, and every one of these is a volcano, and they all have extreme off-world activity.
Yes, matter of fact, Coop, you're exactly right. Matter of fact, I can personally attest to our trip to Mount Baker. That would have been it was just the beginning of September. No, it was the beginning of July, actually, last month, where we went and spent 3 days up at Mount Baker doing a pitch pilot episode for our UFO I-team. And what we were doing was Lee Strauss, our intrepid mountain camera guy, was set up on one of the foothills in front of Mount Baker. And what he does is he uses this time-lapse photography I was mentioning, and he will catch the entire mountain and the skies around it in a stop-action manner, so he can review the tape later and determine if there's any anomalous activity around Mount Baker. This is what he found this year, and this was just last month. Over and over again, he would catch objects that looked like kind of like shooting stars, but they didn't burn out. And they didn't make a trajectory that was unique or different, just like a shooting star. These craft or lights would streak from different directions and all go either behind Mount Baker or looks like even into Mount Baker. So you can imagine staring at the mountain at night. And you can see basically on this tape where it looks like shooting stars are coming from different directions and all, not at the same time, but at different times during the night, all disappearing behind the mountain or potentially even over the top or inside the mountain. These things are going much slower than a shooting star, by the way. That's the puzzling thing. And one of the theories that Lee Strauss has is that these volcanoes that we have here in the state still probably have a magma chamber underneath them that comes up above ground level, of course, and probably is a cauldron inside underneath the mountain. And he's wondering whether that molten metal that might be in some kind of a vortex movement underneath these large volcanoes might even create some kind of a magnetic force or some kind of a homing device for these craft or whatever that come from different parts of the sky and seem to be drawn to the mountain.
And so I know we've discussed we discuss volcanoes quite often here on S4, and so Keith, didn't we discuss this before that the geothermal activity of volcanoes is actually a fuel source for some of these craft?
Yes. Yeah, we definitely did.
Aha! Now that would make sense.
Yeah, it's an energy source that they use in the craft that they have.
Well,
Here.
you know, that would explain why these things that don't look like shooting stars because they're too slow, but they streak out of the sky and either into or around the mountain, would be doing that to recharge themselves.
I'm going to interject here for just a moment. You had talked a little bit earlier about ley lines and crossing and being in areas where some of this stuff shows up. I did some research here while you guys were talking and pulled up a map where Mount Adams is, and I pulled up a map of, well, 2 or 3 maps of ley lines. And there isn't a crossing ley line, but there is a ley line that runs very closely right through there, right through the Mount Adams area up and around up by Seattle. So,
Wow.
there is a ley line running right through that area, and you know, I know that there has been some theories of UFOs using those ley lines as kind of a guidance system, sort of. As to where they're going. So who knows, maybe.
Yes, and interesting, Michael Beers, the Sasquatch Bigfoot expert that is a member of the I-Team, swears that everyone knows about the Bigfoot activity in Whatcom County, up where you guys are in Concrete, and over on the Olympic Peninsula. But he also says that there is just a phenomenal habitat Bigfoot area just to the northwest of Mount Adams itself. And that's where he was leading another team. One team went up the mountain, and Michael Beers and some of the UFOI team went squatching off to the northwest of the mountain.
And, again, what's interesting is all the locations that have the most UFO activity always have the most Bigfoot activity as well.
Right. Yeah, it is fascinating. Of course, we've all heard the stories and theories that Bigfoot and UFOs have some kind of relationship. So I don't know about that, but it is kind of fascinating.
Well, and then you have to look at the two theories, because there's two. You've got the theories that Bigfoot works with off-worlders. I don't completely buy into that one. And yet you have the other theory that Bigfoot are terrified of UFO sightings.
Mm-hmm.
And and I've said this on the show before, but I've always wondered if Bigfoot are abducted like humans are,
Yes,
by off-worlders.
they are. And rest assured, they don't have much more use for them than most humans do.
I don't blame them. I mean, yeah. And can you imagine FMP having their first Bigfoot abductee? Yeah.
Either that or you're trying to track Bigfoot and a UFO comes down and steals him so you can't track him.
Right. So I know we're coming close to the top of our first hour, and I get intrigued, because you look at all the hot spots with UFO and Bigfoot, and it makes you ley lines aside. If we didn't know anything about ley lines, which ley lines aren't a scientifically proven fact, we'll get into that with Markham. I've heard Markham say that before, though, is they can't prove ley lines. They have ley line maps, don't get me wrong, but as far as scientifically shown, they aren't.
We may not be able to get Markham on this evening. He's having some issues at work. That's the only downside of having a guest panelist who's working at the same time that we're doing the show. So we may not be able to get him on. We'll see what happens during the break.
Okay, fair enough. But it just, I want to bring the other theory of missing persons up. Is there any missing persons up at Mount Adams around eceti Ranch?
I don't know historically what those statistics are. We didn't hear any current missing person reports while we were there. But of course, you guys are dealing with some hot cases right now up in your neck of the woods. But no, I didn't hear anything down there when I was in the area.
Well, I want to clarify, because the case we're working on has nothing to do with paranormal. That's just a missing hiker. But it does bring to light the David Paulides missing 411 with the areas we're talking about as far as the UFO and Bigfoot high activity areas. And are they tied with missing people? And again, I want to clarify, the case we're working on, it has nothing to do with paranormal. There's no abduction. There's no Bigfoot involvement with the case we're working on. I want to clarify that emphatically. It's a missing hiker, nothing more. So, and that's the thing when you have a show like this, and you're talking about missing people, and we just happen to be working on a missing person case. There's no connection. But we have high activity of missing people in the North Cascades, where there's also high activity with UFO sightings, Bigfoot activity. And is there a connection? What's your thoughts on that?
My thoughts on that are that I believe they probably are connected somehow. There was an interesting, and I'll try to get this over with before we have to get to the top of the hour, but there was an interesting study that I saw that went along with the David Paulides 411 Missing series books, where someone came across a study that showed that the number of missing persons in these federal parks and that kind of a thing that happen every year, if you discount the normal missing person reports that say that, probably 90%, if not higher, of the people that are reported missing are actually found. Either they've run away themselves or victims of a domestic violence issue that need to get away from or something, or runaway children, that kind of thing. But if you discount all of those statistics of normal missing people that are found, there is consistently a factor of people that go missing every year in the United States that is interesting, the statistics show, because it seems to be, and I might be wrong with the number, but let's just pick 35,000 people just vanish in the United States every year. The study was over a 20-year period. And the funny thing about the study was, even with advanced technology, even with more population over the 20 years period, it seemed that these researchers came up with the conclusion that the same amount of people are disappearing every year. Mm-hmm. No matter how many people in the population grows or the technology gets better and better, it seems to be the same amount of folks, which almost to me seems to be a quota system of some kind, which is terrible to laugh at.
And that's an odd point.
But it's not a quota. It's more an issue of what's the word I'm looking for? An experiment size.
Ah, very good.
I know that's the wrong term for it, but
right. I'm trying to think of the word real quick, Kevin's got a question. How did the Chinese mark off ley lines on their maps? Did they ever have a device to detect it or follow ley lines? And I don't have an answer for that because, again, that would be a good Markham question, and I don't know if he's going to be on tonight. Does anyone have an idea?
It was done with both. Well, the ancient Chinese, number one, had more sensitives available to them. But because of the technology they were using, they also had an amplification tool but there was only a few of them that could do it. Okay, we're not talking about everybody in ancient China being able to. Right. But you had a few of them that could operate the machines and therefore get them marked off.
Go ahead.
The Astral team, it was people like FMP's Astral team that could pull it off.
Well, Joe brings up, it's a sample size.
That's the word. Thank you very much, Joe.
Yeah, and he brings up an excellent point because you remember Eisenhower made a contract with, I don't remember exactly. I've heard two different stories. One was the Greys, one was the Nordics. I believe it was the Greys he made a contract with over a certain number of people they could abduct each year in exchange for technology. And I don't remember, there was a name of the contract that was written or that was signed.
Right.
But it makes you wonder, because I don't remember the exact number of people that was allowed to be taken either. But if you was to match up those numbers, and I'm not saying all the missing people are abducted by aliens, not by any means, because my personal opinion, it's a combination. It's a combination of government, it's a combination of alien abduction, and it's a combination of Bigfoot. I don't think Bigfoot takes people, to be honest with you, though.
They don't, but they do bring them back.
Exactly. Bigfoot's been known to find kids that were lost walking in the woods and bring them back to camp. But I also believe, again, looking at, cross ley lines, portals open up. Because too many of these people that go missing, they were walking in single file line, and out of the blue, Joe's talking to Bob, and all of a sudden Bob's gone. To me, that is a portal. They walk through a wormhole, essentially.
Yeah. Okay, it is time for that break.
It is.
So when we get back, we'll continue on this conversation. This is a good point. We'll come back to it here. When we come back from break, we're gonna probably most likely going to continue our conversation on this. We may get into some of the chemtrails as we go along here. We may be able to get Eric. We may not be able to get Eric Markham on tonight, but we'll try. We'll see what happens. Tonight on our panel we have R. Keith Andrews, astrologer and alien specialist, Michael Hall, the paranormal lawyer and head of UFO I-Team, myself, Corey Reese, and Eric Cooper of Forest Moon Paranormal. Join us every Saturday night at midnight Pacific Standard Time. You can find us on Spreaker.com, The Fringe FM, and for you local listeners, you can catch our shows on KSVU 90.1 on your FM dial on Saturdays from 10 p.m. to midnight. Please go to thefringe.fm and check out the show lineup with shows like Lighting the Void with Joe Roop and The Paranormal Code with Rich Giordano, and a plethora of other good shows. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be right back.
This is Joe Roop from Lighting the Void, and you're listening to KTLK Digital Broadcasting Station, The Fringe FM.
Hi, folks. CBD is the home run hitter for health right now. Why, you ask? Because of what it does for the body. Unfortunately, I can't tell you all about the benefit. You know, there's reasons. Do your due diligence and log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com. Ancient Life Oil uses organic ingredients and is blended in coconut oil for some of the best benefits. Legal in 50 states and non-psychoactive. Log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com.
Select Joe Roop at checkout at ancientlifeoil.com.
This is Mary Ellen Popick of the Sanctuary for Mind, Body, and Spirit. Listen on the Fringe FM every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific and 8 p.m. Eastern, where we talk all things mind, body, and spirit. You'll learn things from the esoteric to modern-day health, as well as hear from incredible special guests. There will be something for everyone each week, so don't miss it. That's every Monday night, 5 p.m. Pacific and 8 p.m. Eastern, live right here on the Fringe FM. See you there.
Reclaim your active lifestyle with Angioprim. Angioprim is the original liquid oral chelation supplement. Chelation helps remove toxins, heavy metals, and cholesterol in your veins and arteries that can cause blockages. Scientific research proves the active ingredient in Angioprim has superior oral chelation action that helps promote cardiovascular health. Find out more. Go to angioprim.com. Talk to a trained consultant by calling Angioprim toll-free 877-882-7221.
This is author Gordon Roop of GordonRoop.com, and you're listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM.
How you doing today, guys? This is Garrett Lee.
And this is Randy Warner.
From the Healers and Hellraisers podcast.
A podcast about people.
You're going to hear stories from the enlightening to the frightening.
Told by those who lived it.
Listen right here on the Fringe FM.
Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, and on the Fringe Free-For-All, right here on the Fringe FM.
Hey folks, guess what the number one phrase that Life Change Tea receives by email? You ready? We love this tea! We love this tea! Time after time, week after week, we love this tea! Life Change Tea gives you more energy, a beautiful cleansing, and fulfills its slogan perfectly. The tea that makes you go. So if you want to be on your health game, log on to getthetea.com and order Life Change Super Strength Tea. Packages come in a 1-month supply, and when you brew this stuff, wait until you see the results. Aren't we all about the results? And with a lot of people's health struggling, we can use a little bit of help. Doctors will tell you disease starts in the gut. So log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Be our next email saying, I love this tea. I love this tea. Get the tea at getthetea.com. Helping America one tea bag at a time.
This is Reverend John M. Polk from johnpolkmedia.com, and you are listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM.
Paranormal radio hasn't changed much in the last 20 years. It's the same boring, safe, and easy radio. The guest comes on, the host asks questions, the guest answers, end the show, right? Not with the Paranormal Code. You actually get entertainment. You actually get information told to you the way it should be told. Very truthful, very direct. I'm your host, Rich Giordano of the Paranormal Code. You can listen to me Monday through Thursday, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific on the Fringe FM. I hope to see you there.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Hi, this is Ryan Gable, host of the Secret Teachings radio show. If you are interested in ancient knowledge and hidden mysteries, as well as a unique and balanced perspective on conspiracies, symbols, and the occult, then join me every Saturday, Sunday, and Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 4 p.m. Eastern, right here on The Fringe FM.
Hey, this is Kurt Green from the Kurt Green Hour. You're listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM.
Welcome back to S4 Radio. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you just joining us tonight on our second hour, we are going to continue talking about some of the experiences the UFOI team had out at the eceti Ranch. We may possibly jump into a little bit of chemtrails as we go along here. On our panel tonight, we have R. Keith Andrews and Michael Hall. Thank you guys for joining us. Welcome back.
We're back.
We are. And we got to get to the electromagnetic anomalies that Michael's team experienced. I know, but I want to jump into the missing people stuff a little bit more, and then we'll move along. Because I know we were talking numbers, and you're talking some of it's. If you go by Missing 401, David Paulides, and again, folks, if you're looking for his books, don't go on Amazon. Go straight to missingcanam.com and get them straight from David Paulides, because they're only like $24.95, $14.95, something like that, versus $150 on Amazon. I mean, come on now, people are making money. Buy them straight from Paulides' website, and they're a lot cheaper. But, I like Paulides' investigative style, because we're talking, he was a law enforcement officer, and he bases his investigative procedure on Missing 401 with law enforcement investigative procedure. So, very valid research. And I know you've actually met the man, haven't you, Michael?
Yeah, the UFOI team presented at the same conference, Cornell Beach UFO and Paranormal Fest, this last March in Ocean Shores, Washington. And I got to meet David and his lovely wife, by the way. She was there with him. And listen to him speak about these amazing stories that he has been able to document, but that the Forest Service seems to refuse to acknowledge and or even say that they keep lists of these things at all. He was very frustrated in his research through, I think, about 4 books now from different parts of the country. He kind of concentrates on various areas that he calls hotspots, or spots where a high percentage of people just go missing without a trace. Or, for instance, small toddlers will just disappear from their family's campground or on a trail just walking along. And for some reason, these same toddlers are either found dead or alive, but miles away in a short period of time that they could never even have gotten there themselves. I'm talking 2- and 3-year-olds are found on the top of 3,000-foot mountains.
I remember one case where they actually found a 2-year-old on the other side of a mountain range, or a mountain peak. I mean, a 2-year-old's not going to hike, let alone crawl over a mountain peak. I think the creepy factor with all this is the cases where some of these missing actually had weapons. And there was a couple cases I read about where they had a pistol, and they found the pistol disassembled.
Yeah.
And you know the weapon was actually disassembled and neatly arranged. Who does that? Nobody does that. And they find their clothes, and their clothes are neatly folded and piled on top of stacked on top of each other. And I know shoes is a big thing. When they did find them deceased, they weren't wearing shoes. Their shoes were gone. These are by definition paranormal cases. They're not just your random hiker that went missing. So and I think there's a couple cases where they actually did find a rifle and the barrel was bent. But and I get back to ley lines again, and I know we don't have Markham, but it makes you wonder if some of these hot spots, some of these cluster points that Paulides talks about, have ley line interaction with them.
Yeah, that's a good point. I remember seeing David Paulides' what he calls cluster maps, where it seems to be these people disappear in certain cluster areas around the country. One thing I noticed about his cluster maps is there does not seem to be clusters in the low-lying Midwest or plains areas. It always seems to be clustered around various mountains and mountain ranges and peaks.
And so one aspect that FMP is going to be working on is looking at the missing people aspect. And we're going to actually be working on looking for missing people, using the astral team, using mediums, and using boots on ground in conjunction. What we're going to be looking at is building a base camp that will be mobile, obviously, in the same manner as an incident command center. So you're talking topo maps, topographical maps. And what I want to do is overlay the cluster maps from Paulides with Bigfoot reports and UFO sightings and see if there's, correlation.
Now, that would be a worthwhile study, definitely.
Yeah, that'll be a fascinating one.
Yeah, time consuming, and I don't have much time. But it's something I do want to get going though. We're actually working on have a guy that's going to build me a camp kitchen, which will be a part of our base camp setup. And like I said, it's going to be based on the same format of an incident command center. So when we go up in the mountains for either a missing persons case, a Bigfoot report, anything mountain related, we'll have a base camp set up just like an incident command structure. Complete with the overlay maps, whatnot, of that particular area. Give you a bigger picture of what you're dealing with.
Yeah, and I would imagine you could have your FMP intuitives as well, looking at those same maps down at either the base camp or back at the FMP headquarters, and be in communication with the away teams as well. Who knows what that information could provide?
Well, and that's you missed the team show. So basically, the way we're going to run operations, we have a drone. Steve's our drone operator. So basically, when you get the missing persons report, the astral team and the medium get a lock on the picture and get last known location of the individual on Google Maps. So basically, they're going to lock onto the energy of the missing individual and go to location based on the map and pinpoint exactly where they pick them up at. Then we get boots on ground and drone into the site to verify, validate.
Good plan.
And as of right now, we actually have an organization that is going to get us a large number of boots on ground that knows what we do, has an open mind, and is excited about what we do to lend us their manpower for when we do get a boots on ground. So things are moving forward rapidly, as in the last couple of days.
That's fantastic. Nothing like getting the break you need, eh?
Huh?
I said nothing like getting the break that you're looking for.
Exactly, and I'm not even going to discuss. I'm frustrated beyond means with the way things are going, but things are looking up on the other side of it. So let's go into the EMF factor of what you dealt with at eceti.
All right. Well, as we were left off, the UFO I team had now split up into 3 different groups with 3 different leaders and 3 different camera and audio guys who went along with us. And the team that I led was at Takalak Lake. Let me spell that, by the way, because it's very hard to Google if you don't know.
It reminds me of that song, Chocolaka, Chocolaka. Yeah. Anyway,
exactly.
You make me laugh every time you say it.
and it's spelled Taklakh, Takalaka. But I believe the natives pronounce it Taklak without the H's. Anyway, very, very beautiful lake. Matter of fact, at night during our sky watches, when Mars was like shining like a beacon off to the right-hand side of the snow-covered mountain, all the stars and the moon, the full moon, by the way, and Mars were reflecting in the mirror-like image of the lake all night long. It was quite a scene. But what happened that night, this would have been, I'll pinpoint it as Monday night, after we had been to eceti Ranch for the whole weekend. We ended up going to the splitting up on a Monday night. So each team was in a different location. And at Takalak Lake, there is a strange phenomena that happened after our sky watch that ended around midnight. And then our team came back to the campfire and fired up the campfire and basically kind of debriefed and relaxed till about 1 or 2 in the morning. At 1 o'clock, the producer who was with our group, his name was Dan Weiss, decided he was going to go to bed. He was an older gentleman, like myself, and he decided to hit the hay around 1 a.m. The rest of the I team, some people were sitting around the campfire till about 2 in the morning or so. And basically, he, in the middle of the night, when his son came to go to sleep with him in the car that they were driving, because the night before their tent had been totally flooded out by the torrential rains that hit us on the first night going into the campground. They were in the car, and every once in a while they would turn the vehicle on just to get some heat. They got probably down into the mid 40s at night, even in this location at the end of the summer. And so they turned their brand new leased car, by the way, just a very late model vehicle in nice shape. And they would turn it on at night to keep warm for a few minutes. Then they would turn it off and go back to sleep. At about 3 o'clock, as far as we can pinpoint, with his son going to bed at a certain time and his son waking up when his father turned the car on to get warm, and then how many times that happened, the the last time he wakes up at approximately 3 in the morning and tries to turn the vehicle on, nothing happened. It was totally dead. No lights on the interior of the vehicle. No sound at all when he tries to turn it over. It was totally dead. At the same time, actually, I am sleeping myself not too far away in one of those very nifty and very roomy, actually, pop-up trailers with a friend of mine. And he is on one side of the pop-up, and I'm on the other side of the pop-up. And I kind of went to bed a little earlier than most. I'm there at 1 o'clock in the morning along with my friend, and we're settling in, and I'm totally asleep quite quickly. But at about 3:15 in the morning, correlating kind of when the vehicle back at the campfire did not turn on, the battery power inside of this pop-up trailer totally died as well. And the reason I know that is that I sleep with a CPAP machine, one of those constant flow apparatuses that keep you from snoring because of the sleep apnea that I've had for quite a few years. And I was lucky enough to be able to sleep in the pop-up trailer with my friend because he had a battery system that you could just use a converter with and keep the machine going all night long. But all of a sudden, at about 3:15 in the morning, my CPAP machine stops working. And of course, when that happens, I immediately notice that and usually wake up if I get interrupted power in the middle of the night. And come to find out, it looked to us that the battery that the whole system was plugged into had just died. So I get up and I decide, well, since the machine is died at this point, I think I'll go to the restroom as well, relieve myself, and then come back and tough it out for the rest of the night. But my friend, of course, wakes up when I stir a bit from my bed, and he quickly asks me what time it is. And I say, I noticed my watch on my arm says 3:15. So I told him 3:15. He says, and I told him I need to go to the restroom. So I'll go out and be right back. And he says, well, by the time you get back, I'll switch the battery over to the other battery so that you can continue using your CPAP machine. So I thanked him, went outside and just took 10 steps literally to the right. And he had set up a really nice little porta potty kind of shed, like a tent that you could actually stand up in. And to tell you the truth, I just had to go number one, and took me about 2 minutes. That was all. I was just doing it real quick because it was cold out too. And so I'm done relatively quickly and turn right around and go back into the pop-up trailer. And my friend had already switched over the battery and was asleep. And as soon as I came in the door, made a little noise again, he wakes up and asks me, what time is it? And I look at my watch and I tell him, 4:15. And we don't think anything of it, and both of us just go to sleep and go to bed. In the morning, when we're all debriefing around the fire, with our cups of coffee, warming up in the old-fashioned blue speckled coffee pots on the fire, the grate on the fireplace. It's really a cool scene, but we're all just pretty much tired after about 3 days of, doing all this investigation. And of course, myself, having to sleep with a CPAP machine. And if I don't sleep 8 hours at all, it's a little difficult. But when we were debriefing in the morning, we realized, wait a minute, and my friend said, didn't you say it was 3:15 when we woke up, when the battery went dead? And I said, yeah, I remember, it's 3:15. And then he said, and didn't you tell me it was 4:15 when you came back into the trailer?
Yeah,
and I agreed with him. I said,
it
yeah.
It doesn't take an hour to go number one.
No.
especially not 10 steps away.
No.
Exactly. Exactly. And all of a sudden it hit us. That just does not make any sense. Matter of fact, here's the other factor that really threw a wrench into the thing is that my friend then told me around the campfire that morning, he says, the funny thing is that battery that went dead last night, and we switched over to the other battery, the battery that we switched from is totally fine. It was not dead at all. So there you go. You've got a battery again dying in two different places in the same campground at the very same time, about 3:15, 3 o'clock in the morning. And for some reason, I cannot account for at least about 55 minutes right after that. So that was fascinating enough. But here, let me tie in the really strange detail. Up on the mountain of Mount Adams, where our away team is sleeping overnight at a place called Lunch Counter, which is the very highest part of the mountain that you can get to on the first day before you make your ascent to the top. They are sleeping overnight in the snow, obviously, in their tents with their sub-zero gear. And they are exhausted from having to schlep all of this equipment up the mountain, probably 50-pound backpacks each. And they fall asleep quite easily. But the story goes that their cameraman was sleeping in the same tents that they were. And he relates the story that he woke up unexpectedly at about 3 in the morning. And he says that there were diffused, pulsating lights playing on the outside of his tent, on the wall of the tent. And he thought that was strange, and he watched them for probably 2 or 3 minutes, he says. Multiple times these lights would come by, pulsating and kind of playing on the outside wall of the tent. He is a young guy, so he carries his iPhone with him all the time, and he said he checked his iPhone for the time, and it happened to be 3 o'clock in the morning. And then in the morning when his companions, the older Lee Strauss and Philip Wade, he told them about this, and they asked him, well, why didn't you wake us up? He says, well, what did you do after you saw these lights? And the real fuzzy response that this young man gave was, I don't know, I just went back to sleep.
and that's a common response for abductees. They don't think anything of it.
Exactly. And the fact that at 3 o'clock in the morning, all these things were happening in different places around this area at Taklak Lake was just, the synchronicity was crazy. Now here's the other kicker. Philip Wade, who says that he did not wake up at all on the top of the mountain there with Lee Strauss. He is the the director of Ambition Pictures, and he was up on the mountain sleeping as well. When he woke up in the morning, he said his back felt like it had been pierced or bitten, or some kind of a major problem like a boil was on his back. When they got down to the bottom of the mountain, Lee Strauss took a look at his back and told Philip Wade about his abduction story, where he has this massive dream of a needle piercing the back of his neck right at the spine. And we have photographs of this. Philip's back, his lower back, right on top of his spine, has a major wound in it. And it's one of those things that is raised up and red and pussy, basically, probably in the mid-lower back area. So we are keeping an eye on that to see if indeed it is a fast healing kind of wound, which would be kind of indicative of potential alien contact, or if it's just a normal wound that would last a week or so or two before it heals up.
Right.
So that was a synchronicity and a coincidence that this young photographer up on the mountain sees these lights playing on their tent. And by the way, they are up at 8,000 feet, nowhere near anyone else. No one was camping in the area. And the funny thing was that they were surrounded by a rock wall about 4 feet tall. They decided to camp inside of this kind of natural rock wall area to keep the wind from buffeting their tents at night. So whatever was shining on their tents had to be shining up above them onto the wall of the tent on the outside and was pulsating at the same time. All this happened at 3 a.m. or 3:15 a.m. in the morning on the same day, Monday night, the 27th of August.
And what's interesting is I've seen those lights before. I mean, but they were in an apartment that I lived in, and they were on the ceiling. There's nothing reflecting. They were independent lights, and they reminded me of fairies, but they weren't. So I know what you're talking about with those lights, and that's interesting. And yeah, 8,000 feet. There's nothing reflecting. There's yeah, that's interesting. And yeah, you had multiple abduction experiences on that one.
Well, that is one of the things that we're looking into there. The gentleman who was in the car, the producer of the film company, whose car did not turn on at approximately 3 a.m, he just decided to hunker down and pull up the sleeping bag tighter in his chair, in his seat in the car, and wait for the morning. In the morning, when he's waking up and we're getting ready to, have breakfast there around the campfire, he starts his car up and it starts right away. Now, when he's relating this story to us around the campfire that morning, all of a sudden it dawned on me, how many compasses, just normal old-fashioned compasses, do we have in this group? And we found out we had about 4 old-fashioned normal Boy Scout kind of like compasses. And then we had 1 digital GPS system that you could hold in your hand and carry with you as well, that has electromagnetic capability. So I thought, well, what we should do is have all 5 of these GPS compass devices on the perimeter of the campsite. So we all split up and went to different areas, probably 20 yards in diameter, in a circle around the campsite. And I asked everyone to point in the direction that north is facing on their compasses, including the digital one that our engineer, Scotty, was using. He's a retired Boeing engineer, a real techie guy, and very scientific. So he has the digital version. And the funny thing was that and it was very dramatic. Everyone pointed immediately to the direction that their compasses were heading. All of the compasses were heading in different directions. None of them were headed true north. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden we're starting to figure this out. And we're going, well, what if this vehicle that the producer was sleeping in that night is the source of some kind of magnetic anomaly that's causing all of these strange things happening with compasses that night? And so what we do is we get the producer, Dan Weiss himself, with a compass, and we give him a long stick. It was like a very nice cane, actually. And we asked him to point with the cane above the compass which direction north faces on his compass. And then we asked him to just walk slowly around his brand new leased vehicle and try to see if my thought was probably this compass is going to point north or point to the actual vehicle, even if he walked around it in a circle. I was thinking that that would be the source of this entire affair. Unfortunately, it wasn't that way. What happened was when he walked around the car with his compass and was pointing in the direction with the cane, which way north was, as far as this compass was concerned, it formed a pattern that was very unusual. It didn't always point towards the car. It would point away from the car in the front of the vehicle, and it would point to the vehicle in the back of the vehicle. So in other words, what happened to this car, as far as we can tell with our semi-scientific analysis, the entire car was turned into basically a bar magnet with a positive and a negative end to it. It wasn't as if there was something like the engine itself that was drawing electromagnetic energy towards it. Matter of fact, when we put the compass, not just one, but a couple compasses, one at a time, inside the vehicle, the compass would point to direct north, real north. There was not the magnetic anomaly inside the car. It was on the skin of the vehicle. Matter of fact, our engineer, Scotty, actually had an app on his phone that would show electromagnetic effects. And when it got too close to an electromagnetic effect, it would actually go totally, the screen would go red. And as soon as you went very close to the skin of the vehicle, it would automatically just top out and become red. So we thought then, well, what if this car just happens to be sitting over some kind of a portal? Maybe it's not the car at all. Maybe it's something coming from the ground or something in the area there that is causing this. So we decide we're going to move the vehicle and get it completely out of that area. Matter of fact, we moved the car up into a road away from the campsite just to get it out of the area to figure out if indeed it was the area itself that we were camped at. And we actually drew a line in the dirt around the car so we could specifically know exactly where the car was sitting. Then we did our experiments with the compasses and the digital compass, and there was nothing, no anomalies at all. They all pointed to north, although the funny thing was the digital compass that Scotty was trying to demonstrate and trying to use never actually functioned. He could never get it turned on. Even when the car was there, even when the car was not there, it seemed to malfunction completely during that morning. So then we move all the way back up the hill to the car again. Sure enough, it's still highly magnetized in the shape of a bar magnet. So that was the most amazing little kind of experiment we did regarding the electromagnetic anomalies. But here's another kicker. The camp host, who is in charge of the whole area for the summertime, is a young woman named Jasmine, and she's very, very helpful. Been there a long time. She was the one that we interviewed about all the Bigfoot activity in the area. She tells us the next morning that funny thing is that last night there was about 3 other campers that came to her panicked because their cars or their trailers or their pop-ups or whatever they were using for electricity totally died that same night. Matter of fact, one of our UFO I-Team members in a separate vehicle could not start her car either. It had to be jumped the next day, and she decided she was just going to leave a day early because she didn't want to chance going down the road and not being able to make it home if her car died again. So
I got two quick questions for you before you run off in an odd direction. When you had the car still in the location and all the compasses were around the perimeter, I know the compasses were pointing in different directions, but were they pointing in a pattern themselves when you relate them to each other?
Ah, good point. We thought maybe they were, because we thought the compasses were in different locations around the campsite. And I probably am remiss in not writing on a piece of paper exactly which direction each compass in the circle around the campsite was pointing. But we just did it at that point to find out, indeed, there was some kind of weird anomaly going on. And we kind of like pinpointed then down to the vehicle. When we got that close, kind of pinpointed that this was maybe one of the vortex anomalies, or where some of these things were coming from. That's when the pattern around the car turned into basically like a bar magnet. If you would take lead filings and put it on a table, and then put a bar magnet in the middle of the filings, of course, it would make that kind of like bulging thing on one side, and then maybe in the middle it would come back in, and on the other end it would be, either bulging as well.
Oh, yeah.
And that
I understand that.
Yeah.
The other question from that end, when you've got the other three vehicles, was there any pattern that you figured out as far as the order in which they died, or for that matter, were they in a straight line? Like compared to each other?
Oh, very good. That's quite a intuitive thought, that were these vehicles in certain areas that would affect a straight line, ley line, or something like that. I'm trying to think of whether that could be possible. And without, of course, I know two vehicles of our group plus the extra pop-up trailer were not necessarily in the same line, although if you wanted to take into consideration maybe a 30-foot difference as far as being a thick line of about 30 feet apart, possibly they still could be within a swath, of straight line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking in terms of, if you've got the missing time and the electromagnetic screw up, quite frankly, you may well be looking at a ship coming in, knocking the electrics out, picking somebody up, dropping them back off, and leaving.
Yes, exactly, Keith. Matter of fact, we are pursuing that. We do have in the UFOI team a certified regression hypnotherapist. Her name is Mary Kennedy, and she has already volunteered herself to regress a few of us hypnotically, just to see if there was any unconscious memories that can be brought out of some of the missing time reports that we had, because we had missing time in the pop-up trailer. We had missing time in Dan Weiss's vehicle because he didn't know why it took so long for his son to join him in bed. He thought it was just 10 minutes that he finally came to bed, and it ended up being 2 hours later, his son said, that he actually came into the car. And then, of course, you've got the missing time potentially up at the top of the mountain at exactly the same time. All of these three events occurred at either 3 o'clock or 3:15 in the morning that same night.
Yeah, and that would make total sense from my end.
And real quick, I need to give a real quick shout out. We have two new FMP members in the last week. Megan and Daniel, both Marines, both excellent for security, for darn sure for the team. So I want to give a real quick shout out, welcome them to the team, welcome them to S4. They're both listening tonight.
Definitely welcome to them.
You know,
yes.
Trippin is also bringing up, what about an EMP pulse?
EMP pulse would have created a bigger problem and it wouldn't have recharged.
True.
Oh, good point.
Okay.
Which seems to be a pattern there as well. These batteries that die, these electrical systems seem to pop back up relatively quickly, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Actually, it really does.
Well, you're right. If your theory is correct, you're right.
Also, real quick, do you remember the kind of craft that you saw? And Keith, if Keith could jump in, what races potentially were in that area?
Yeah, good point. The only thing that I could, and I haven't seen the tape of the daylight UFO that was recorded up at the top of the mountain on Mount Adams. The team that went up the mountain said that they saw a pretty close UFO in daylight that they filmed up there. So I can't wait to see that. But the one I saw was just the most brilliant. You could tell it was a low flying, brilliant light, much bigger than any kind of airplane even. If you saw a commercial airplane flying by at 30,000 feet, and the lights that were flashing on an airplane. This thing was a huge, solid white light that had brilliance about it, so you couldn't tell if there was a craft shape. And then at one point just made these amazing flashes, which some people thought were lasers towards the crowd and the camera.
Well, the only ones I can think of right offhand that have that kind of lighting system and the lasers belong straight to the consortium, and they are research vessels.
Ah.
They're the communications vessels. And especially with what you guys are up to, that would make total sense, although it is kind of entertaining that they'd be down that close. Usually they operate from orbit.
I thought consortium ships didn't do any taking people.
Well, that's the thing. See, on their own, if it weren't for the lights, then I'd be telling you right off the bat you're dealing with grays. Okay, because more often than not, they block out the issue. What I'm curious about is why the, if you will, pointer lights. Because that's not normal for them at all.
Yeah. No, that was definite, and I can't wait to show you guys the actual. Well, actually, you know what I can do? I can point you to James Gilliland's own videotape of this event that he has already posted on YouTube. So if you post or Google James Gilliland or eceti Ranch and recent UFO flare-up, I'll bet you would get the tape, and that will give you an idea of what we're talking about, and you can probably study that much better. But here's the thing, is that the camera angles that we got on the UFO I-team of this exact same craft, I believe, this is just my opinion, is a much better and clearer image that you get to see, and the flash of light that seems to be some kind of a laser being pointed towards the camera is just brilliant, multiple times, at least 3 times that I remember.
Did it have the same feel as what you experienced up in Glacier?
You know, this this thing was something that we could actually see. The things that we experienced up in Glacier were moving so quickly, so fast, that the only way you could record them would to be taking small, short videos of 2 minutes, 5 minutes at the most, of just a clear blue sky during the daylight. And, of course, then what you do is you put them through a laptop and you frame by frame review the videos, and you'll see the craft zipping through the frame of reference of the camera at in 3 frames. And at 29 frames per second of the video cameras, typically, that is super fast. It's so fast you couldn't even see it with the naked eye. The other things were the nighttime UFOs that seemed to be disappearing behind Mount Baker from different angles, by the way. Those were just basically very large lights, bigger than a shooting star, but they didn't have a trail to them. They were just very brilliant white lights that came at horizontal, vertical, 45 degrees and disappeared into or behind the mountain. And I didn't get the same feeling about that, but it just is chilling to watch, almost as if the mountain is a base of some kind, receiving craft all night long.
I think all of them are. I think all the volcanoes are.
Not all, but the better portion of them. The ones that are in the process of blowing up, not so much.
Right. My curiosity too is where's the Pleiadian mountain range in relation to Mount Baker, as far as the direction these craft are going?
Well, good question and a very good point. The Pleiades Mountains, basically the Seven Sisters Mountains, are to the north of Mount Baker, they are pretty much on the Canadian border, the U.S.-Canadian border.
Right.
So,
part of them go into Canada.
Yes.
And were any of these craft heading for the Pleiades Mountains?
Well, I don't believe that night that Lee Strauss was filming, he noticed that at all. But we have been up on Artist Point, which is kind of a viewing spot halfway up Mount Baker, looking north towards the Pleiades. And we have videotape at the UFOI Team Facebook page and on YouTube at Lee Strauss's website on YouTube called Not of This Earth. That's his where he deposits a lot of his videos of lights that are just dancing above the Pleiades themselves. Different colors. They turn different colors. They flare up and go back down and almost fade away, then flare up again. And we have videotape of that activity happening over the Pleiades as well, but not so much of the streaks that disappear behind the mountains like at Mount Baker.
Okay. Because I'm still intrigued by the Pleiades mountain range.
Yes, it is a very intriguing place.
Especially because I've never been there, but I know there's been other shows that have talked about experiences on the Pleiades mountain. So we're coming up to the end of the show. Again, you can find the Forest Moon Paranormal booth at the market every weekend, all the way through October 6th. We have the Pagan meetup on the 16th, and of course we'll be talking more about the Paracon and other shows. So you got any thoughts about tonight's show, Keith?
Well, I'll tell you, talk about a fascinating topic because you went just about everywhere with it. But, the reality is, I've said for a long time, it's all connected. And, I've had I don't know if I want to call it pleasure on part of this, I had the pleasure of actually, if you will, being lost and having a family of Bigfoot bring me home. When I was just a tiny little lad, the part that wasn't enjoyable was when I ran into them. This is why I said, yes, they get abducted, because I've run into them on ship.
Oh.
So, yeah, if you think humans get panicky about it, you should try them.
Now,
the difference.
I'm also curious, has anyone ever reported radiation poisoning around eceti?
Oh, that's a good point. I don't know about that. That would be something to look into for sure. See if there. By the way, funny you should mention that, Coop, is that one of our members, Bree Brockton, she's our ex-cop and Hollywood stunt woman, actually, on the UFOI team. She said she became very sick at eceti. She just did not feel like herself, and as soon as she left the ranch and headed out to Takalak Lake, she felt much better. That was a funny thing. You should mention that, because I didn't connect that until you just said it.
Well, with that number of craft that are flying around, and, historically speaking, there's been cases where abductees and even CE3s and CE2s, which CE2 is landed craft, for any listeners who don't understand the Close Encounters classifications. CE1 is just seeing lights in the sky. CE2, landed craft. CE3, obviously, entity encounters. CE4 being an abduction. And CE5, calling craft down through human interaction. But yeah, there's actually been cases where people had radiation burns and poisoning.
Yes.
So with that number of craft, I wonder about the human effect from the craft flying around at low altitude like that.
Well, I will definitely keep an eye on the UFOI team members here and see if there's any kind of evidence of radiation sickness or anything. We do have a meeting coming up on Monday night. So I will talk to the group about those things.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Where can folks find UFOI team?
Well, they can go to Facebook, of course, and punch in UFOI team with a lowercase I and find us there, or they can go to ufoiteam.com on the internet.
And you have a radio show. You want to talk about that for a minute?
Well, thanks for mentioning that. Every Saturday night, actually just before your show, we have the Night Dreams Talkradio.com show where I do 7 to 10 p.m. Pacific Standard Time show, all on paranormal, various subjects that we talk about. Matter of fact, the last subject a week ago was about the JFK assassination, which was fascinating.
Oh, and Trip has a question for you. Does your team carry a Geiger counter?
We do not, Trip, but that is a great idea. And I believe our engineer, Scotty, I love that. He's actually a retired Boeing engineer, and his name is Scotty. But
there's an interesting coincidence, if you will.
I know. I just love it. And this guy doesn't look anything like Scotty. He's very tall and thin, but he has that same attitude. I will mention it to him because I think he probably could get us a digital Geiger counter somewhere. He's into gadgets, so he would be the guy to talk to, and
right.
I will do that, Trip. The idea.
That is on the FMP's wish list as well. And also, I will plug real quick, we do have a GoFundMe in FMP for operational cost, which does include base camp operation equipment, Geiger counters, things of that nature as well. You can find that in the FMP group. Also, I do have a radiation alarm that is always on my 24-hour pack. just for these kind of things, as well as any kind of incident encounters we have. I don't have a Geiger counter. I want one, but I do have a radiation alarm that does go with me.
Very nice.
Say again?
Very nice. That would be a good thing to have.
Yeah. I'd like to get individual alarms for each of the members for when we do go out on cases like this. Keith, real quick, tell us about your new book.
Well, it's actually called Believe in Yourself and Follow Your Dreams. And in simplest terms, it shows you how to take your life from where it is to where you desire it to be as quickly as possible. But I've kept it to, I think it's 32 pages long, so it's very short and very easy to carry with you. Best part about it, in my eyes, I had a client that bought one, and it literally, according to what she wrote, helped her reunite with her own sister who had they'd been estranged for 27 years.
Excellent. Excellent.
Very nice.
And it's been a great show tonight. Thank you, everyone, for being on the show. For any new listeners, you can find Forest Moon Paranormal at Facebook. Just look for Forest Moon Paranormal, jump into the group. And with that, Corey, go ahead and take us home.
All right. That's where we're headed. I would like to thank our panel this evening, R. Keith Andrews, astrologer and alien specialist, Michael Hall, the paranormal lawyer and UFO I-Team lead and head of it. Please join us next Saturday at midnight Pacific Standard Time. We're going to be talking about winter preparation and how we can be ready for those cold winter months. You can find us on Spreaker.com, thefringe.fm, and KSVU 90.1 for our local listeners. I would like to thank all of our listeners because without you, there is no S4. Good night, and remember, keep your eyes to the skies.
So here's the thing. I'm a rooster. It's my job to wake everyone up. Mornings are my busy time. What with having to keep an eye on the horizon? It's not an easy gig. Mornings are what they are. But it's different for you because there's McDonald's. And right now you can get 2 breakfast sandwiches for $5. Mix and match the tasty toasty egg McMuffin and the savory satisfying sausage McMuffin with egg. But only for a limited time. Turns out McDonald's makes mornings better. For you at least. Excuse me.
Price and participation may vary. Limited time offer cannot be combined with any other offer or combo meal. Single item at regular price.